Hello and welcome to PlanCo Spotlights. My name is Jonti from Geekism and I'll be taking you through this coaster spotlight. This is the Violet Tumbler by Belisaria, and it's an example of a side friction coaster built in a bit of a realistic style. Belisaria says on her submission that the coaster itself is pretty wonky, but since it's a side friction, that's what I was going for. I was trying to go for a more realistic build, and I think that's something you've really accomplished well, especially with the scenery. I'll talk about the coaster in a little while, but first of all, let's take a look at the queue scenery and the station. First of all, I have to talk about this foliage. It's absolutely beautiful. I think you've managed a really great, sort of very difficult line to sort of walk actually, between it looking manicured but not too much. I think it looks a little bit wild, it looks a little bit ragged, but it actually looks like somebody's coming in here and they're tidying it up to the best of their ability. Really great selection of trees as well. They're perfect sort of height, perfect sort of size and shape, and they fit really, really nicely with it. I'm assuming that the colour scheme is violet based on the name of the ride. I'm afraid I'm colourblind, so I can't really tell, but I can tell that they definitely work nicely together. And also, a few people will be quite happy because a lot of us use this technique now, using these coconut slices, which is part of the sweet section in the game, the candy section. Coconut slices that give you a really great looking sort of mulch, bark covered area. It turns out really, really nice. I love the foliage in this build. The queue itself is simple but effective, really great example of a classic sort of cattle pen style queue. Apologies for how the guys are standing in it. I had to put the paths down myself and I've probably rushed them a little bit, to be honest with you, but I love how the fences all fit together, and the sort of pieces of foliage here and up here sort of cap off the area quite nicely. If I have one thing I would say is that this area of foliage here, it makes it a little easy to get over to the ride. If you're going for a realistic build, I would probably like to see some sort of fencing here, maybe different to this fencing, but definitely some sort of fencing here, because you know, a naughty little tyke could quite easily jump just over there and hurt themselves quite badly, I think. So I think, if anything, I would like to see just a little bit of thought going into the sort of safety aspects and the actual sort of regulations around the ride itself. The station then again is very simple but effective, a very nice use of colour and a great use of the lights here. These rides were turn of the century, sort of very early 1900s, and I'm getting a bit of a pier, end of the pier, sort of fairground carnival feel from the lights and the sort of wooden build and wooden structures. So I think overall it works really nicely. Love this bit of backstage area here where we've got some of the fences used in the ride itself, placed over here, some of the rails here that could be examples of replacement rails needed, a few other bits and bobs as well. And I really like the fact it runs throughout the build that we've used these creosote bushes here to sort of resemble bracken, and you know, this ride is going to be very old. None of these were really built much later than sort of 20s and 30s when sort of traditional wooden coasters came around. But these, so this is really old and it's been cared for as best it can, but you know what? These things do end up looking a little bit ropey after a time, and I think you've captured that really, really nicely. Underneath a really nice trellis roof, we have a relatively plain interior, to be honest with you. I think maybe a little bit more could be going on in here, but then I can't really think of what itself would be happening. I think realistically the queue would probably continue through here. I know we can't do that because of the game's limitations, but probably the queue would come round here, and on this side, I don't know, maybe some very light theming, some boxes and things like that, just to sort of resemble a little bit more going on. But overall, really nice, really neat. Love the sort of large areas of gap here using the smaller walls. I think that looks really nice, keeps it open and light, and yeah, really quite pretty. Now, as far as coasters go here on PlanCo Spotlights, I'm not the go-to guy, but I'm a keen idiot. I try and take an interest, and here's what I know about side friction coasters. They were mostly built around the early part of the 1900s, and there's only one still standing. It's called Leap the Dips, and it's in Lakemont Park in Pennsylvania, and it's very much what this ride is based on, both the ride in the game and also, I think, the one that has been built here. It's a side friction coaster. Basically that means that there isn't a third set of wheels on top of the rails that actually sort of hold it down onto the track. There's just a pair of wheels on the side and a pair of wheels on the bottom, like on any regular car or other modes of transport. What that means is technically it could come off the track at any point if it goes over a hill too fast. So you get that sort of really crazy, rickety, out of control feeling whilst riding them. Due to the lack of that third set of wheels, there were some limitations to how these rides could be built. They didn't have very huge drops. They also very rarely had drops that went over 45 degrees. Both of those things have been kept here on this ride, so it's really, really good. The other thing that they often had were these really crazy turns that really sort of threw you around the turns that became a big feature in other wooden coasters later on, such as Wild Mouses and things like that. And overall, this layout, it's not amazingly traditional. There's a few issues regarding like this big long curve at the end here isn't particularly something you would have seen much, but other than that, it's actually quite close. The only thing I think that needs a little bit of work is that they come a little bit quick around each of these smaller turns in the ride. Without those wheels on the top of the track, they would have flew off here. There's no way that you would manage this straight off this hill here being spun around. What these rides often did is use gravity as a braking system, so the turns would always be at the top of a hill as opposed to the bottom of the hill, losing some of the speed of the car as it came around the turn and then back into smaller hills. So the smaller hills you've got are great. These sort of double dip, triple dip downs are the exact sort of thing you would see. The turns are nice and tight, very little banking, and overall the coaster isn't very smooth as it shouldn't be. The only thing I would say is that these turns here need to be higher up so that the car even, just loses a little bit of the speed as it comes around. But again, I'm no expert. This is just sort of stuff that I've researched for the sake of this video, but I hope you kind of understand what I mean there. Last but by no means least, we have to have a ride of this thing. So there you go. It's definitely got the feel of a side friction coaster, but I'm sure you'll agree that those turns are a little quick, and in turn I think it makes the whole ride a little quick as well, to be honest. These things often chugged through, and it was more of a feeling of coming off the tracks as opposed to speed that created the excitement on them. But overall, I think it's a really, really lovely looking build. It's simple without being plain. It's quite realistic, and I think you've had done a great job. We have to look at these lights in the dark because I think they're going to really make this thing pop. I knew those twinkling lights would make it pop, and also the whole thing is actually lit from really nicely hidden spotlights as well. It's really, really beautiful. The lovely thing about this ride is it's perfectly placed on this square or rectangular footprint. You can take this and drop it straight into your parks. I think this will work really well as a sort of first coaster in a park, or somebody was working on more of a traditional park, a more realistic park, a family park, or even if you were going as far as building something like a pier park or a seaside resort or something like that. This would fit into all of those really, really well. So there we go, a really great coaster from Belisaria with, personally, I think one of the toughest coasters to build with in the game. I think you've done a really great job, a few slight tweaks, and it will make it absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for sharing it with us here at PlanCo Spotlights. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, everything we do here at PlanCo Spotlights is in aid of Special Effect, a fantastic charity that provides fun and inclusion for people with disabilities through video games. You can find more information about them, as well as ways to donate, down in the description. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.